Welcome to another After Action report for Trail Challenge. If you are part of Green Team or Red Team, I kindly request you to leave as this video is locked and that is your verbal warning to do so. If you are new to Trail Challenge, it is an ongoing event where teams try to take control of an entire map with the risk-like rules, but where the combat takes place on the actual maps by creations built by the teams. Each video will be mostly self-contained, however, it is recommended to go and watch the others. To start with, I guess the biggest and most noticeable thing is that Blue lost a lot of both troops and territory. From the last video, as I explained, the plan was to go and attack Danger Zone, which was a green-held territory near the bottom. This would give Blue Team some space to work with and make sure that other territories weren't easily exposed, and then retreat troops on the top side so that the Green Team and Red Team could fight. So on our assault on the Danger Zone area, it was a 300 on Blue Team and a 400 complexity on Green Team fight. Our initial plan was to use basically a stationary turret. The idea was that since, although there was an attacking team and a defending team, there wasn't actually a difference between them in practice, since it always ended up as a death match anyway. So the idea was, even though we're attacking, we can still use stationary vehicles. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. So just make a really, really effective stationary vehicle by basically putting a massive negative space turret on the bottom of the ocean. The breakdown for the vehicle is pretty much as follows. The idea is that the water stops any bombs and stops any rockets, the two most common type of explosive weapons that are found on aircraft. All explosive weapons pose a very big danger because splash damage from hitting the ground near our stationary creation would have likely destroyed it. However, since they detonate on the water surface, only cannons can penetrate, and they're the only thing that's explosive that can shoot through the water. However, again, explosive weapons are generally a little less common on aircraft, so we still would have been relatively safe. And past that, it's as simple as just making a massive negative space in the middle. Something else that has been annoying me about negative space creations, the negative space, the hole should be most visible from the direction the enemies are attacking. In this case, it was from above. If you're making a vehicle that uses negative space, it should be, unless for some reason it can't, it should be mostly pointed towards the enemy. So, like, ground bases should be a ring if they're expecting air attacks. If you're making a vehicle, make it a ring, but point it towards the enemy so that when they attack head-on, the bullets would pass through the center. It's an entirely different story if you're expecting to turn fight, because then it's the side of your aircraft that's taking more damage, and thus the hole should be in the side. The negative space should be in the side of your craft. But other than that, yeah, it was pretty effective, and in fact, we would have won if they kept fighting. See, the problem is, no one wants to fight when they know that they're gonna lose. Long story short, a new rule was added where defending teams can now simply sit on a spawn point for long enough to count as a victory, but only if they are undamaged by the end of it. Not undamaged, only if they don't take damage while they're sitting on the spawn point. This is so that immobilized vehicles, or things that can't actually attack much, basically count as an automatic loss for the attackers. So I instead ended up going for a two-person anti-air ground craft, and my buddy Radon went for a 140 complexity aircraft, which ended up dying pretty quickly because sails are not very strong. Who would have thought? The breakdown for the anti-air vehicle is that some interesting things about it is that it used gyros for all the turning of the turret. This meant that instead of using servos, which would have locked the rotation to the actual hovercraft, it just using gyros that locked it to the world's rotation. What this means is that it effectively gave it like a kind of pseudo stabilizer. It's not quite a full stabilizer, and it still has like drift and multiple other issues, but it can do all the stabilizer things, and during movement it does hold it stable. And the idea for this one was really just redundancy. Where the previous idea was negative space, here I just put copies of everything everywhere. Multiple different propellers going in multiple different angles, so that if I lose multiple, I would still have full range of motion. Shields along the perimeter to protect from bullets from the side, although by the end of this I realized that the bigger threat was bullets from above. Miscalculation on my end. I should have probably stayed with my estimates that there's going to be more single fighter craft, which, by the way, our opponents were all using single person aircraft. Again, as I predicted. The idea was redundancy, that's why I had so many hover pads. So even if I did take damage from above, losing a hover pads would mean practically nothing to me. In fact, by the end, I was struggling on like 5 of them and could still move decently. The turret itself is the most armored thing since it protects pretty much all the critical things underneath it, and I was still accounting for air attacks. It had redundant cameras. By the way, there is no distinction between a driver and a gunner. Both of them have full control over all the symptoms, not symptoms, all the systems. So in an emergency, the driver could become the gunner. And this also means that they can interfere with each other, but that's just something you have to figure out before you actually start using it. This does mean that if they need to swap or get into the wrong seat, that's not really a concern. There were 4 cameras, 2 cameras for each person on the actual turret, and the turret was the densest point of armor I had. It had 2 blasters inside of it, and it could shred aircraft pretty well. Not amazing, but overall quite good. It took a lot of damage, and in fact, I think I over-armored it. What I think I should have done in the end was instead spend that armor and spend that complexity on armor in other places so that the hover pads would have stayed alive just that little bit longer. I had plenty to spare, but it's better not to lose them in the first place. So that's the breakdown for it. In the end, our friendly aircraft, which was 140 complexity, ended up dying pretty quickly, so it was down to us. And when you're fighting aircraft, they can dodge pretty consistently. And while we did survive a pretty significant amount of time, we couldn't exactly deal much damage either. I guess that's just part of the problem where even if you build a dedicated anti-aircraft system, you can't really attack back against fighter craft if they are moving fast enough. In the end, we failed that attack, and nothing changed on the bottom. Immediately afterwards, we retreated our troops from our 500 zone pressing against green back into our 200 zone. This would make an equal fight if red attacked us, while also allowing green to push forwards so that green and red have the ability to fight. As we did this, of course, it was Green's turn. Green chose to push on the zero zero complexity zone that we just created. Zero complexity zones still take up an attack action to capture. However, they do count as an automatic victory. Then red, even though there was a very clear, easy target right next to it, chose to attack blue in a 700 versus 700 match. Now you see that whole, oh, we have 700 complexity as well, that was all just posturing because we didn't actually have the time to build anything with high enough complexity. And I spent my time, and I didn't have the DLC for Airborne at that point, so I couldn't actually even join the fight there. So we did the reasonable thing and decided to, like usual, invent new rules. In this case, we abused the rules that were literally just created in that the defending team can hold a spawn point for long enough, it counts as an automatic victory. Now, to clarify, I didn't fully explain before, it became, it has to be, it changed after this match again, because before this match, it was just hide, it was just if you avoided getting hit for 10 minutes. After this, it changed avoid getting hit for 10 minutes on a spawn point. So before this, during this match, that meant that we could hide anywhere. So it pretty much just turned into hide and seek. And that's how we lost a 700 troop territory. This is such an interesting game. Not much to say here. It was really just hide and seek, so yeah, it was just a bunch of nonsense. But that's that for this episode, I guess. There's really not much to say here.